Vision Edge gives you less eye strain and reduced damage caused by blue light. We like to call Vision Edge sunscreen for the eye. It all starts with your highest level of visual performance, only achievable through scientifically proven Vision Edge.
Hello and welcome to the Open Your Eyes podcast. I'm Dr. Kerry Gelb, the host of the documentary Open Your Eyes. Please visit the film's website at openyoureyes2020.com, featuring interviews with more than 50 optometrists from around the country sharing information on eye care and eye disease. If you're new here and you like our interviews, press like, subscribe, share, and hit the bell to get notifications of great new interviews. Also, please leave comments. Americans love sports. Studies show about 20% of the US population engage in sports, and about 21 million kids between the ages of 6 and 17 play a team sport. Some parents spend up to 20% of their income on sports lessons, teams, and specialized training. The average competitive high school and college athlete practice their sport with drills and techniques up to 12 hours a week, and some as high as 24 hours a week. The legendary Cleveland Browns football coach, Blayton Collier, said, "The eyes lead the body." And studies show that up to 80% of perceptual input in sports comes from the eyes. Vision, just like speed and strength, is a critical component on how well you play any sport. But curiously, vision enhancement is often ignored. Sports vision, the science of helping athletes reach peak levels of performance through the enhancement of visual skills, is becoming more and more important in the success of many professional athletes. Today's guest, Connecticut sports vision optometrist, Dr. Jennifer Stewart. Dr. Stewart has worked with athletes from the NHL, the NFL, and the NBA, as well as professional athletes in squash, lacrosse, and figure skating. Dr. Stewart is a former Division I track and field athlete. Dr. Stewart works with sports vision patients at Performance 2020, a specialty optometric practice in Stamford, Connecticut. Thank you, Dr. Stewart, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here. I'm really into sports. I've always been a baseball player. And even as a kid, I remember reading a book, and I think his name was Gerald Raven. And he was probably an old timer, one of the first sports vision optometrists. And I remember practicing every day the techniques in his book. And I went from hitting under 100 to hitting over 300. So I'm really excited to have you. But explain to the people out there exactly what is sports vision from your point of view.
So we think of vision as just seeing 20/20, and that's kind of our go-to metric, that if we see 20/20, we consider that we will be fine. And sports vision goes beyond what you're seeing. And the way I describe it is it's what you see, it's how your brain processes that, and it's the motor action you take. And we break down every sport into those three key functions, and every sport has a different way of processing. But in every sport, the faster that you can process something and have a better, more efficient, quicker, or stronger response, you're going to be a better athlete.
There's been some really interesting studies when it comes to sports vision. There was one at the University of Cincinnati in baseball. Can you explain that?
They looked at the effect of sports vision training on their team. And the great thing is that we're now seeing more and more research come out of the improvement that sports vision training can have on athletes. And similar to strength training, can be difficult to quantify that because there's so many additional factors that go into it. But they put athletes through a program and assess their skills after the program and notice an improvement. We noticed that anecdotally. I'm not a research-based scientist, I'm an optometrist. So we do measure our athletes before they start a training program, and we're able to measure their performance over their training program to see improvement. So we're measuring factors in our practice, but we're also hearing from athletes how they're improving on the field, on the ice, on the court, and they're seeing the effects of the training. And what they'll say to us is, I'm responding quicker. My eye-hand coordination is better. the world looks like it's slowing down around me when I'm in the goal. I feel like I'm anticipating things. I feel like I'm making decisions quicker. And in any sport, if you can do any of those faster, you're going to be more successful. You're not going to be falling behind, and all of the other skills that you're working on. Just like you said, your batting improved. So these athletes are working so hard on honing other skills, but we're leaving out that visual training component. So they're able to add that to the realm of what they've been doing.
And more professional sports teams are now using sports vision to help their athletes. My little guy, I have an 11-year-old who plays baseball, and his coach played in minor leagues for the Giants. And he was telling me that they did a lot of work with sports vision. How many professional teams do you think are actually utilizing sports vision at this time? Although we may not know a total number, but what do you think?
I was going to say probably a lot less than we know of. So they like to keep it in their back pocket. Yeah, and sports vision training is not a new novel concept. It has been around a long time, and you're 100% correct. Baseball has been one of the sports that's embraced it a long time ago and very fully. Hockey also is a sport that has embraced it. So I think it's been around a long time, and that there are some teams that were utilizing some sort of sports vision training. The technology explosion over the last 5 years has really made that accessible to a lot more teams. It's really changed the way that we're assessing and training athletes. So I think that has made it easier for teams to have buy-in, because the training tools are measurable. And athletes want to know numbers. We are all number conscious. We all want to see improvement. We all want to know that it's working. And I think that before, the technology that was available made it difficult for teams to quantify that. And also financially, they want to know if they're investing in something and investing in their players, that they're able to quantify that, especially in the sports world. So over the last few years, there's been a huge growth and a huge explosion in what's available technology-wise. So I'd be hard pressed to think there's not a professional team that's not doing some sort of sports vision training. And I'll use a big umbrella term of that could look very different for a lot of different athletes, and a lot of different teams. But I think they're all starting to now pick up on this is the edge. We know strength training is important. We know how important nutrition is, recovery, sleep, all of the things that go into an athlete. We're well aware, psychology, there's a huge network of professionals that work with these athletes, and kind of we've been the missing link. And I think it's very exciting now to be part of this and to really see how we can affect athletes of all ages, all sports, all positions, all levels. But at the professional level, I have a feeling that most are doing some part of this.
We're not going to talk a lot about safety today and concussion, but there was a study done that athletes who participated in sports vision, it decreased concussion. Can you talk a little bit about that?
And I don't really do concussion work per se in sports in Performance 2020, but there's been a lot of talk about concussion. It's a very big topic right now. And the athletes that we've worked with have noticed that their peripheral vision has improved and their peripheral awareness, and they're more able to see, kind of next to them, not behind them quite. But what we work with athletes is making them expand from here to here. And we're all very central focused. So we work a lot with drills on expanding that peripheral awareness, so they're more aware, not only to be a better athlete, but to be aware of teammates and opponents and possible collision. So we feel confident that the work we're doing is also helping them be safer out on the field, because not only will they be a better performer, but they'll be more aware of their surroundings.
Why do you think that athletes in general take vision for granted and don't think about training their vision, where they'll play basketball for hours and hours, and like my son will hit for hours and hours, but he doesn't think about maybe training his eyes?
Oh, that's a good question. So, and that's why I'm here. So it's my one-woman crusade to make it very important for everyone listening. So I think the start of it is that we take for granted what we see, and that a lot of the athletes I've worked with are not, I'll use the stereotypical air quotes, perfect vision at 20/20. And I think a lot of us assume that if an athlete, and speaking of children and specifically, if they're not complaining, they're seeing well enough. And to start, I think everyone needs a comprehensive eye exam, starting very young. even if they're not complaining. And I think a lot of us who have athletes as children take it for granted and say, well, they would be complaining if they weren't seeing well. And we had a lacrosse goalie, a Division I lacrosse goalie, female, who was playing at a large Division I lacrosse school. She came to us for an assessment for Performance 2020. And she was seeing 20/30 in one eye, which if you have ever had an eye exam, that is 3 lines worse than 20/20, which is perfect. And 20/50 in her other eye, which is now 5 lines worse than that. The legal limit for driving in Connecticut is 20/40. So she was barely at the legal limit for driving. So this is a Division I high performing athlete who had been told she saw well enough. In general, that I did not agree with that, but especially as an athlete. So she was not performing at her full level because she was not seeing well. So we first brought her back, fit her with contact lenses, and then reassessed her. But she also took it for granted because she said, I just thought that was the best I could see. And I think we do 100% take it for granted that this is how we are. And then we also think, well, how important is it to see well, or I'm seeing well enough, I don't think there's anything I can do to improve that. But you're right, people spend hours doing drills. So she spent years playing lacrosse at a suboptimal visual level. And when she went back to college, her coach emailed me right away and said, whatever you're doing, it's amazing. And I said, I would love to take credit for a lot of it, but it's mostly getting her seeing well. So I think that's the first thing we take for granted, is making sure that our children and all of us are seeing the best we can. But we forget that how much of the information goes from our eyes through our brain to our body. So like I said, my one woman crusade to make everyone aware of the importance of not only our vision, but our cognitive system on our athletic ability.
And you alluded to this before, but what's the difference between eyesight and vision?
Good question. So eyesight, the way I think of it is, eyesight is what we see, and vision is everything that goes into that. So it's not only what we see, but it's what we're processing and everything we're doing, not only with our eyes, but the decisions we're making with that vision. So I think of eyesight as, if you're listening and you've had an eye exam and you sat in that chair and you looked at a chart, to me, that's eyesight. It's what you're seeing. But vision is, if you're a hockey goalie, it's what you're seeing on the ice. It's being aware of your opponents and your teammates as they're moving around. So there's something called dynamic visual acuity, which is how well you see when you're moving or when an object's moving. So we think about when you have an eye exam, you're sitting in a chair, looking at a chart that's black and white on a wall that's not moving. There is no sport in the world really that I can think of that is that. So something called dynamic visual acuity is how well you see when you're in motion and or an object is in motion. How well you see in your side vision, your depth perception, how well you can judge how far things are from you. Your contrast sensitivity, how well you can judge differences in color. So, in baseball, as the lighting is changing, how well you can pick up the ball against different lighting. To me, all of that, plus I could go on for an hour about that, but all of that to me is vision. It's not just what you see, it's everything else that you're taking in.
Is 2020 good enough?
Oh, it depends on who you ask. So yes, to the average person. If you're an athlete, probably not. So there is some great work by some colleagues of ours, Dr. Dan Labby and Dr. David Kirshen, who have done a lot of work in the baseball world, right up your alley. And they've worked for years, probably decades, looking at Major League Baseball players and not only training them, but assessing and kind of looking at their characteristics. And the average Major League Baseball player, uncorrected, which means wearing no glasses or contact lenses, sees better than 20/20 naturally. So when I have an athlete who is in, say I have a high school baseball player who is 20/30, which is again 2 lines worse than 20/20 on the eye charts. That's how we measure vision. And the parents say, well, he's seeing good enough. I will politely say, then if that's, if you don't want them to be corrected because they're not complaining, they're never going to make it as a Major League Baseball player, because seeing 20/30 is not good enough. And I will talk about how I look at athletes a little bit different, but to me, seeing 2020 is the bare minimum.
So what is just explain to the audience, what does 2020 mean, 2030 mean? What are those numbers?
Oh, I feel like this is the toughest thing to understand, and it's something we explain daily in the eye exam. It is the optometry lingo. So we measure everything at 20 feet. So if you're looking, I have to think about as I say it, because it's very easy to get backwards, even for me. So somebody with perfect vision sees our chart, there's a line at 20 feet. If somebody
and that's the top number, 20, the top 20
top,
is
yes.
20.
So if you are worse than 2020, worse, meaning you are not seeing as well, say you are 2030 or 2040. We've all heard our eye doctor tell us, that's our vision. That means that somebody with perfect vision could stand at 40 feet to see the same line that you would have to see at 20 feet. So it's just our metric to measure vision so that we're consistent. So if you're in my office or you're in your eye doctor's office, or you are in whoever's office, it's our consistent measurement of measuring your, what we call visual acuity or your visual clarity. So everyone's office is not 20 feet. So we usually make an adjustment on the chart size to account for that. So I know it's a confusing metric.
So you talked about dynamic visual acuity, and as we go on later in the podcast, we're going to talk about techniques that you use to help improve athletes. But dynamic visual acuity or visual acuity in motion, what kind of chart do you use for that to be able to measure somebody's dynamic visual acuity?
So it's a tough one, and that's when they're working really on a great way to measure that. There is an older method to do that using a rotator. So if you picture like a big, almost like a record player, I think I just dated myself there. But if it's turned on its side, it is like a disc with letters on it, and it will rotate in either clockwise or counterclockwise. And the athlete, either while they're still, they might be in their batting stance, they might be moving. They're tasked with reading letters of different sizes at different speeds. So obviously the slower it moves, the easier it is. As it gets faster, it gets more difficult to keep tracking that. So that's probably one of the older technology ways to do it. We're still waiting on some really other great technology to come out to measure that. It's one of the hardest things to measure. So that's usually one of the ways that's done.
I interviewed Todd Dunn, who was a Major League Baseball player in the 90s. And unfortunately, he had a severe eye injury and he no longer was able to play baseball. But when he was, one of the training techniques they use is they would use like a tennis machine where the ball would come flying out 120 miles. He said literally 120 miles an hour. And they would have to be able to say what letter was on the ball or what, I don't think the color, but certain letters were on the ball. And he said he wasn't able to do it, but there were some guys on the Brewers, because he was on the Brewers, that were like Jeff Cirillo back then. He was able to see the numbers and the letters on the ball, and that they use that a lot for training baseball players. How does that help a baseball player?
And again, that goes back to visual acuity too. If they were not 2020, they wouldn't be able to see that to even start. So for baseball, hitting a major league fastball is always said that's the hardest thing to do in sports. And again, they have to make very quick decisions based on limited information and make a motor decision based on that. So, if you're thinking about a pitcher, as they're releasing that ball, the athlete is having to make a decision based on the pitcher's movement and where they're holding the ball, how they're standing. And as they release that ball, that pitcher's having to make it, or the batter's having to make a decision, a motor decision of what they're going to do. Are they going to swing? Are they going to bunt? Are they going to take it? Where do they think that ball is going to come? And they have very unbelievably short amount of time to do that. So they can't sit there and think, okay, he's, his hand's here. I think it's going to be a curveball. So I'm going to do this. Maybe I'll move my body. And, if they're thinking about that, 3 pitches have gone by in that moment. So with, that target coming towards them, they're having to make a decision as that ball's fired out. They have to have their visual cue of the shape. They have to make a cognitive decision of, okay, I saw a triangle. And then their motor response in that drill is they have to verbally say triangle. So again, all these drills and sports can be broken down into those movements, and just thinking about what people are doing. And that's a great one for them now to speed up. When they go into a game, they're primed, and their visual system and cognitive system are prepped now to make these quicker decisions, because they're so used to doing it based on, firing these balls at them at a faster speed than they are probably getting a pitch. But they're trying to make that decision of what shape they're seeing before it's coming. If they're seeing it here, it's too late. So they're trying to do as quick as it's released, just like they're trying to make a decision of what that pitch is going to be before it's released, because they have to respond way before. They're not tracking the ball as it's coming towards them. They've already made that decision as it's being released, what they're going to do.
When I was in optometry school, fourth year intern at ICO, we trained the IIT baseball team, which was the college across the street. And it was in the winter, and we trained them on this light, this thing with the lights, that now they have a professional version of that.
Yeah.
And this was like when they were first developing it. And at the end, they would have to make a predictive saccade. So if you could explain a predictive saccade, but these kids did really unbelievable. Like, we had independent judges. They did this training for like 6 weeks or 8 weeks. And at the end, they improved so much, and their hitting went up once the season started. So if you could talk about that light row and a predictive saccade. Well, I'm not sure what you guys call that, but it was really interesting.
That technology again was around a while ago, and has been re-released in a more updated way. So it was called, I forget the formal name, but we call it an anticipation timer. So if you picture kind of a row of lights, and it can be on, let's say, a sawhorse, that's a good way to kind of verbally look at it. And an athlete standing on one end, and they're watching as the lights are coming towards them. And they have to anticipate and guess when the light is going to be here. You can measure and say, when you think the light's going to be here, I want you to click this. In the older technology, you'd use like a clicker. So the athlete would stand in their stance, and they'd be watching as the lights come toward them, and they'd click when they think it's going to reach them. So again, they're having to predict and time when the light starts. They have to make a decision. It's quick, it's like, it's not do. It's quick, and they have to anticipate, and again, make a visual determination of their task, make a cognitive decision of when they think that light is going to be where they're supposed to be, and a motor decision to click. So they're also making a predictive, what you call the predictive saccade, which a saccade is an eye movement from side to side. So if I'm looking side to side, quick eye movements, that's a saccade. So they're not following those lights. They're not what we call pursuit eye movement, and that's a slow eye movement. They're not slowly watching those lights come towards them. If they're not going to be one of your successful ones. So they're watching that light to start, they're making a decision, and then they're jumping. Their eyes are jumping quickly to where they are at the end. So they have to be good at knowing where the light starts. They have to have good depth perception of knowing how far it is from them. And they have to make a decision of, okay, when the light starts, I have to make that motor decision. So they have to have good anticipation and timing. So as a baseball player, that's a great drill for baseball players, because when they're batting, they're making a decision, an anticipation decision based on the pitcher's release. So that is a great drill to kind of solidify that they have to watch the pitcher release their ball, and they have to make that quick jump to where it's going to be. So they have to, we call it predictive. So they have to make good predictions based on good information that they start with.
At one time, eye dominance was big, the dominant eye. What's the feeling about that now?
That's a mix. That's a good question. That is probably depending on who you talk to. There's a lot of questions, especially in baseball. I didn't work as much with baseball. We worked a lot with hockey and lacrosse. So dominance is less there, but baseball dominance plays a big role in hitting. And there's a lot of research and questions about left eye dominance, right eye dominance. Is there, exactly dominance or cross dominance better? So I've got some great colleagues who do a ton of baseball work. So I know that they've done a lot of work, again, Dr. Labby and Dr. Kirshen, in the baseball realm. So dominance is an ongoing topic.
So let's talk about the visual skills needed to improve people in sports. So you could go through some of those.
Sure. So as long as the list of sports there's that many, a list of that many skills. So I will not spend 2 hours talking about all of them, but when we work with an athlete, and when we work, especially with an athlete in a sport new to us, that can be a little bit intimidating. And Performance 2020 is located at a hockey facility. I did not grow up knowing a thing about hockey. It was probably one of the sports I was least familiar with. So we ended up in this great spot, primarily working with hockey players, and lacrosse, another sport I did not grow up with. So when we started working with these athletes, and we primarily have built up a following with goalies based on, they have just, I think, a very unique set of visual and cognitive skills, and they really love the training and they understand it very well. So I had to learn quickly so that I could help them understand how I was training them. So again, I would break down each sport and think about what visual skills are important for each sport and each position, because that's very different too. So when you think about a hockey goalie, it's very different than a baseball player, very different than, I worked with a professional figure skater as well. I, again, don't know much about figure skating other than what I see on the Olympics. So figure skating was probably the most interesting to me because I had to really put on my thinking cap and be creative. So, we looked at figure skating and said, what visual skills, you would not think of figure skating as a very visually demanding sport. There are no balls coming at them. It's not, we worked with an individual, so it's not a team sport. But for her, it was balance and coordination and awareness of her peripheral awareness. Focusing and concentration are also very important for athletes of all sports, especially for figure skating. It's a long time. It's a short period, but it's also a very visually demanding sport with a lot of concentration. So, other sports, she's not working with hand-eye coordination like a lot of other sports, but some of the other skills, hand-eye coordination, I usually say, eye-hand coordination, eye-body, eye-foot. We've all heard of eye-hand or one of those. So in a sport, it's coordination between your eyes and your visual system and your body, whatever that might be. For a soccer goalie, it might be your hands. For a soccer player, it might be your feet. But that coordination and the how much time or how much delay there is between those two working together, I think that's a big one. Anticipation and decision making, again, going back to your light example, predicting what's going to happen. And Steph Curry is one of the great examples in sports vision. He is a basketball player, and there's a couple articles about him, and there's some YouTube videos of him doing some sports vision training. But there's a great article about him talking about how he would make decisions before his opponent knew that they were going to do something. So he would watch the way that they'd slightly turn their head. He was looking at their nose, knowing they were going that way. So he had already anticipated his movements going here. So he was thinking 3 steps ahead of his opponents. So he really had honed in on his anticipation and decision making. Reaction time, how quickly do you respond to a stimulus? I was a track and field athlete. So, when you don't think of track and field as a sport that sports vision's applicable to, but when you're in the starting blocks, the quicker you can respond to that starting gun, the quicker you're going to be, a response. What else? Depth perception, we had talked about a little bit, judging how far you are from an opponent or a teammate or the ball. If you're overshooting or undershooting that, or if you're a basketball player and you're going to take a shot and you're not judging that distance well, it's all things we know and we understand in sports. But when we think about it with a visual component, people go, oh, that makes sense. I never thought it was my vision. I thought it was my physical skills. And kind of looking at them together will make every athlete be more successful.
Put those together, like somebody who's undershooting a lot. What's wrong with their vision? What can we do to fix it? Someone that's overshooting, somebody playing hockey. Give us some clues how we can improve their skills and what you do as an optometrist to help them. Let's start with hockey.
So, first, if I had an athlete who said, or a parent or a coach, we get we're part of a great team and network of everyone working with this athlete. So it might be a coach who says to me, this athlete's having this issue, or a parent or an athletic trainer, or the athlete themselves, depending on their age. They might say, I notice I'm missing shots. I'm a hockey goalie and I'm missing, down to my right, and I'm consistent and it's not, everyone's noticing it. First, my recommendation, as always, is to have a comprehensive eye exam, to make sure that you're seeing as well as you should be. I can't stress that importance enough. You can't fix what you can't see. So I always have them start with a comprehensive exam. I don't do what's called vision training or vision therapy, which is another part of optometry, which works with the binocular system up close. So if I think an athlete is having issues with their binocular vision in a close range, I have some great colleagues who practice that part of optometry, which is a whole nother great part. And I'm lucky to have great colleagues who can take on those athletes if I think that's applicable. Most of the work we're doing is far away or at a distance, because their sports are usually played at a distance. So for an athlete who might be, missing shots down to the right, I wouldn't tell his opponents. So we keep it pretty quiet. So especially with professional athletes, like their mom is the word on anything they say. You don't want that getting out to their opponents, but we'll assess that and really see if we do see that as an issue. And then we'll kind of focus a lot of our drills in making that an area that they use their focus on and that they attend to. So with athletes, say a goalie, we might focus on doing ball drills where we're, throwing, like you said, throwing balls at them, using different colors, using different size balls, but really focusing on that area to help them improve that peripheral awareness in that specific area.
Macular degeneration is a leading cause of vision loss, with 15% of Americans being at risk or already affected. Scientific evidence proves that by using mesozeaxanthin, lutein, and zeaxanthin together replenishes the macular pigment and promotes healthier vision. This formula comes in only one product, MacuHealth.
Thank you for tuning in to the Open Your Eyes podcast. If you like the video you're watching, please hit the like button. Also, hit subscribe for weekly new episodes of the podcast, along with pod winks and bonus content. All right, let's get back to the show.
And how about if we go back to Steph Curry? What are some of the eye exercises he does that you saw that have shown on YouTube?
I only know what I see on YouTube. I'm not privy to his insider stuff. I keep looking, but so he does some great drills that I've seen. Anyone can Google this, and it's fun to see. There's something called Fit Light, which are wireless LED lights that you can mount on the wall. You can put on, on the floor. You can put them on poles. And there's some great drills of him dribbling a basketball and hitting these lights. And it looks, I won't say it looks easy, because I don't think it looks easy, but he makes it look a lot easier than it is. So that is showing that he can spread his awareness to do something in addition to the sport he's doing. So anything we can do to make an athlete uncomfortable in a good way, anything we can do to stress their cognitive system when they go out and play a sport, it's going to be easier. So we use sound. So we'll use music, or I will talk to somebody to try and distract them. We will ask people. One of my trainers was famous for asking state capitals, which I learned really quickly to make sure I knew all the state capitals. So while an athlete was doing one of their training programs, he would just start asking them what the capitals of certain states were. He'd ask them to do complex math programs. So it's called split attention, so that they can't focus on one thing. They have to think of something else while they're doing their sport. So when they go out on the field or out on the court, they're able to be focused, and they know that when they go out there, anything they've done in the training is harder than what they're going to do in their sport. So Steph Curry, the bouncing of the basketball, I think there's one of him dribbling a basketball and catching a tennis ball, or bouncing a tennis ball against the wall. And again, he makes everything look easy. It is not that easy. So it just shows what what his physical abilities are, and the way that he's able to do a complex task, but also his cognitive system, that he's able to do that and to kind of split his attention to doing two different things, like, patting our head and rubbing our bellies. That's hard in itself. So he's doing something like that with moving, with two moving balls.
And how about eye tracking? How important is that?
Eye tracking, it depends on the sport, but if you can't track something, there's no way you're going to be able to hit it or stop it. So eye tracking is huge. And again, with the technology that's evolving, we're now being able to watch what athletes are tracking, and it's very interesting and not always what you think it's supposed to be. The tracking used to be very cumbersome, a lot of, picture, glasses with, you would track where athletes were looking. They'd wear like a battery pack. But a couple years ago, probably, I think 5 or 6 years ago, I went to work with the Miami Dolphins at their training camp, and we were tracking, part of the assessment was tracking the eye movements of the quarterbacks. And it was all of their new quarterbacks. And it was just very interesting because we had all of them line up outside, and there were two team members, not athletes, but they were standing with their hands behind their backs, and the quarterback had his back to them. He would turn, and as he was turning, as he would launch the ball, they would put their hands up, and they each had a different color glove, and they would yell red, and he would have to quickly, again, visually find the red glove, make a cognitive decision of where that red glove is, and connect with the person holding the red glove. So in a quarterback, that's not a tough thing to do. But what we were watching was where they're looking and where their eyes are going. And we all think they're going to come out and perfectly find that red glove, but you could see some of them come out and they're all over the place. It takes them a split second to find the red glove, where others would come and boom, they're right on the red glove. Well, who's more likely to get sacked? The quarterback who makes the quick decision and quickly comes out of the pocket and finds the glove he wants? Or is it the quarterback who, it's very small difference, but is moving his eyes a little bit? Okay, now I found it. That delay, while it doesn't seem a lot, as we see in the Super Bowl, like that could be the difference between winning or losing a game.
And what kind of techniques can be used to improve eye tracking?
So it's interesting. There's a whole great ton of work done by a woman called Joan Vickers, and she is just an unbelievable person in the sports and performance vision and cognitive world. And she has she developed something called the quiet eye. I don't know if you're familiar with the quiet eye. So if you Google it, you're going to get some great videos too. She's a pro at talking about this, and she's been around doing it for a lot. And she focuses a lot on golf and basketball, golf especially. She's been in all the golf magazines, or the quiet eye has been in all golf magazines, talking about fixation and how stable, what we call the fixation or the eye movements. And that's not even just in tracking, but when you're looking at something, we all assume, I'm looking at my Zoom camera right now, and I assume my eyes are perfectly still and they're not moving. And we know that's not true, that my eyes are making these little movements. So she's done a lot of work with figuring out how to quiet that and how to get people to quiet those eye movements so that they could be more precise in their movements, especially in golf when they're about to putt. She's got, I could spend forever talking about her. She's just wonderful. So she talked a lot about how had strategies to do that, to quiet your visual system. But in eye movements, in saccades, we do a lot of work with charts called heart charts, which are just picture a chart on the wall of letters and numbers. And we work with athletes in making that more complex, of moving from one letter to the next, or 1 and skip 3, 1 and skip 4, so that they can get used to figuring out where their eye needs to be and getting more precise at moving their eye to that target. So it sounds very simple. And we start simple, just like with strength training. I always say, I don't have my athletes come in and we do a complex program, because just like in strength training, I actually just started doing Olympic weightlifting a year ago. So I'm just reaching my first year as an Olympic weightlifter. My first day, I was not doing the Olympic lifts. I had to build to that. And I had to build both my physical strength, but also the understanding of the movement. So that's what we work on in sports vision too, is we start with small movements and make them more complex. But with eye tracking and eye movements, we're really working with athletes to be aware, that they can work on this, and figuring out ways that they can be more precise and again, not overshoot or undershoot where they're looking.
So what are some of the techniques that Vickers has developed to quiet the eye?
It's a good question. It's a complex answer to go into. She has some really great ways that she helps people kind of look and visualize where they're looking, especially with golf. If you Google her golf work, she has some great ways of where to look on the ball and where to look and to make sure you're looking when you go to putt, so that you're not just saying, I'm going to putt and I'm going to look at the ball, because that's what most people do. They say, I'm just going to look at the ball. So she has it more specific about exactly where to look, so that you can kind of fine tune that movement, so that you're looking at a smaller target, so that you're not looking at the ball and now your eyes are doing this, but you're looking at a little piece of the ball, so that your eyes are more precise. So she's got some great videos too. I think it's Alan Alda. She has a video of, it goes way back. There's a video online where she has, I think it's Alan Alda with this head apparatus with I think it's basketball. So she's tracking his eye movements when he's looking at when he's taking a free throw, and eye movements are all over. We all think everyone's looking right where they're looking, but you can see they're doing this. So if your eyes are moving all over, it goes again back to the cues you're giving your body. If we're not giving our body the right cues, how can we expect that motor response to be as accurate and precise as we would like it to be?
So if somebody's watching and they wanted to do something at home to try to help their tracking, what could they do? The heart chart, or is there something else they could do just to get them started before they see the optometrist for sports vision?
That, I think it's hard to really do that without making sure there's no underlying issues too, and making sure that your tracking is proper. So again, having a comprehensive exam to rule out anything underlying, and then a binocular vision assessment as well. There's some great drills, like on the golf magazines, especially with the quiet eye, there's some great drills there. But also there's just a great network of us out there too. I'm not the only one, thankfully. There's a great network of us who are very passionate about sports and performance vision. I'm a member of the International Sports Vision Association. I'm an advisory board member. And if you go to the website for our organization and you put in your location, you'll find one of us in your backyard. And I think that's the best way to really fine tune it, is to properly identify I won't say issue, but any opportunity, and then look at ways that you can improve that. And that might not be in office. There are some people who are very creative at doing home programs, but I think kind of making sure you're doing the right techniques and the right training for your position and your sport are very important.
And how about depth perception? Can you be a good hockey player, a good basketball player, a baseball player without depth perception?
Well, it depends. That's a good question. So it depends on why, if somebody doesn't have good depth perception, first identifying that and measuring that. But again, going back to my example with my lacrosse goalie, when you are not, we use the term fully corrected in optometry, meaning you're not seeing to your full potential. So if somebody like my lacrosse goalie, she wasn't seeing as well as she could, and when your eyes are not seeing the same, it affects your depth perception. So somebody like her had grown up like that with probably not ideal depth perception, but she was able to overcome that probably based on her physical and cognitive skills. She really excelled even with not having optimal depth perception based on her lack of correction. But I've worked with athletes, we call them monocular, or use vision in one eye. I've worked with athletes we use the term amblyopic, which is a conditioning meaning one eye is not correctable, because of some issue. So I've worked with athletes also in those conditions. They know, I'm not the one to identify that, but we work on figuring out how to get them to be more successful given what they have.
So let's talk about testing for sports vision. We got through the eye exam and we know that they don't have any disease. They may or may not need glasses or contacts. We fit them with the contacts. Now they're ready to go into the sports vision exam. What are we testing for? What are a few things that you're making sure that you test for that hopefully you could improve to make them the best athlete they could be?
And this will differ too, depending on who you see. And the great thing is that's changing, and we're becoming more standardized in sports vision with the technology that's available. It's standardizing our assessment and training, and it's standardizing what we're all looking for and how we're measuring that, which is really exciting. And I think that's what's even the last few years. It took me a while to finally open my sports vision practice. It was a dream in progress, so don't ever give up on your dreams. It was something 10 years in the making, and finally just pulled the trigger. But what really was what prompted me to do this was the technology that I looked at some of the technology out there and said, oh my gosh, this is what I've been waiting for. So we use something called the Synaptic sensory station, which is a huge screen that is both used for assessment and training. And we assess athletes using this technology because it's standardized, and we're measuring the same 10 visual skills on every athlete. They're measured at specific distances, and there's a set protocol of how to do it. So it's consistent and it's measurable. It's also comparing these athletes to a database of their peers in their sport and position. So if your son came in, I could compare him to all 11-year-old baseball players in his position to show him how he compares. So again, athletes like comparison. They want to know, how do I do against everybody else? So especially if they don't understand the number they're being compared to. We all know what a batting average is, but people don't know what, I don't know how you're measuring depth perception. I don't know what that means. So the great thing with our assessment is it gives them an automatic feedback based on, there's 10 visual and motor skills we're assessing, including visual acuity or visual clarity, how well they see. Because if they don't do well, we stop right there. So we're measuring depth perception, we're measuring contrast, how well they see in different lighting conditions and different backgrounds. We're measuring eye-hand coordination, how quickly they react. And I do this because that's what the test is. You have your fingers on a tablet and one of them changes color and you have to quickly react and put your finger back down. So that's measuring their motor response to a visual cue. We're measuring their peripheral awareness. If you see any of these videos, I feel like everyone's seen, they're touching lights as they appear. So it's measuring their side vision. We're measuring what's called visual capture. It's how quickly they can make a movement to the side. And it's like you mentioned, those saccadic eye movements. We're also measuring anticipation and decision-making, where they have to respond to certain color lights, but not respond to another. So again, they have to make a quick decision and a motor response to that. Do I hit the light or do I not? So there's a few others we're measuring. Multiple object tracking multiple objects in space. So again, that goes similar to dynamic visual acuity. If you're thinking of a hockey player, no one's standing still. So everyone's in motion. So they're having to track where people are and make decisions of where they're going to end up. So we assess all of those in our assessment, and then we reassess every 6 to 12 sessions so that they can see their progress.
I would imagine contrast sensitivity is very important in hockey players.
Yes, baseball too. Baseball is a big one because they have those changing lighting conditions. So, it's very different to play a day game versus a night game.
So explain what contrast sensitivity is and what kind of training techniques you do to improve it.
So contrast is how well you see at different backgrounds or different lighting. So if you've ever played baseball and you're playing during the day, it's very easy to see that ball in a well-lit environment. But now, the clouds come over and it gets a little more cloudy and you're trying to catch the ball against maybe the back of the stadium, and it's harder to pick up that ball against that condition. Or you look up and you're trying to catch a baseball in a cloud, and that contrast is very different. So when we work with athletes to work on their contrast, we don't necessarily say we're going to work on improving your contrast, but we're going to make again it easier for you to make decisions and make you more aware. So all of the training really helps them to just to be better at figuring out information and use that information to make better decisions. So contrast and depth are something we include in the training. But we don't necessarily say this is a drill for contrast sensitivity, but we will vary the lighting conditions when we're training. We'll vary the colors of the targets we're using. Will vary, are we, against a white background or is a dark background? So just getting athletes better at picking up objects on different varying light conditions to make them just anticipate that better.
You talked about balance before. How does that work with eye exercises for athletes, and why is that important?
Balance is such a great piece of what we do. And for us, in any sport, if you're off balance, I mean, it's funny, we think about this, we go, oh yeah, that makes total sense. I've just never thought it in the visual system. We think about if you're not stable and if you're not, if you're off balance and you're moving around, you're not going to be successful, but the information you're bringing in is not as stable. Balance has been a great way for us to increase the complexity of the training. And we will add that in again, once an athlete has proceeded through kind of a base level training program, we'll add in balance. So now they've got to deal with moving visual cues, both the cue might be moving, what we're doing, and their body's moving. So now they're not sitting in a chair looking at what they're needing to do. They have to now incorporate their body movement. And it helps them because when they go out on the field or in the court or on the ice, they're not sitting still, they're moving. So now they're getting better at using their visual system and their cognitive system and integrating that with their body movement. And we just try and overload what they're doing. We use the Bosu balls a lot. The ball, if everyone's seen it, it's flat on one side and picture like a blue half dome. And if you stand on one side, if you put the blue half part down, you try and balance. I mean, I can't do it. It's very difficult. But if you add that into a skill they've already done, we might be having them have one hand behind their back and they're catching a ball. And we might be using red and green balls. So we might say, catch the green balls and let the red balls go. And they get pretty good at making that visual cognitive motor decision. Well, now it's too easy. Now I want you to stand on a Bosu ball and do it. So now they're wobbling around and now they're trying, it's just one more complexity. And when they get that pretty easy, I said, now stand on one foot and do it, and so we just make it more complex because again, they're not standing still, and I want their whole visual system to be integrated with their body movement.
When you're doing so great at any sport, I'll give an example. When David Ortiz was playing in the World Series, when the Red Sox were in the World Series, and I forgot how many years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, and he was hitting everything. It looked like he was hitting a beach ball, like he was in the zone. Now, what is being in the zone? How do we keep them in the zone, and how do we prevent them from becoming like tunneled where they?
I'd be a gazillionaire if I could figure that out. I would be a gazillionaire. And that's right there. That is the biggest question in sports because and Joan Vickers also talks about that in her work. When an athlete is not having extraneous visual movements and their eyes are not moving around and they are quiet, their whole body is in alignment and they are able to do what they need to do because everything is queued up, everything is working, everything is in alignment. And it's not as easy. Yeah, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. But it's really working on all of the skills that an athlete needs to give them the best shot at being not distracted. We are a distracted society. So we work a lot on minimizing distraction because if they're paying attention to what's going on over here and over here, there's no way that they can focus on what they need to do. And we actually can't multitask. We cannot do two things at once, even though we think we can. So really kind of working on really quieting everything down and getting them to focus on what they're doing and not be thinking about the next inning, not be thinking about the next pitch, not be listening to anything that's going on or thinking about anything else, but being in that moment. And, if I could make everyone do that, oof. But, it's a work in progress. And I think all of these skills that any of the athletes we're working with, that's our goal. We want an athlete to go out there and go, oh my gosh, that hockey puck looked like a basketball. It was moving in slow motion. And was the hockey puck actually a basketball or a beach ball? No. Was it moving any slower? Absolutely not. But their visual and cognitive system were so primed and so working at all the potential, that everything did seem to slow down around them. So they were able to, again, see what they were doing. Their visual system slowed it down for them, and they were able to anticipate and get their body ready for whatever it was and make that decision. And it seemed like it was moving in slow motion because everything else was moving so much faster.
What kind of techniques do you do to help with peripheral expansion?
So we do a lot of work on that with everyone, because again, I think we are also, we're all focused on our phone. We're focused here, we're very central focused. So we do a lot of work again with the Synaptic sensory station, which is it's just a large Android, but we do a lot of work on their peripheral awareness. And that's a great one because it's self-training. They realize, oh, I missed, okay, I'm missing all of these. Okay, I can't look, but they train themselves to kind of move out and be more peripherally aware. We do a lot of work with ball toss drills, tossing, again, different color balls, different size balls. We also use those fit light lights I mentioned that are LED lights. We mount them on poles. So we might have the athlete engaging in something straight ahead, maybe reading a heart chart or reading a paragraph of printed material, and there are lights on the side that they're having to respond to, maybe based on the color, a pattern. So they're having to keep their eyes centrally because I'm watching them, and they're having to do a task centrally, but they're also having to respond to something in their periphery. Unless they're able to kind of expand that, they're not going to be able to do that.
And I would imagine that's important with a cyclist.
Absolutely. You want to see those cars. You want to see everything. I think it's important for all of us, walking down the street. We are not good at knowing what's going on around us. Our heads are usually buried in our phones, but I think, being a better driver. I had one of my first athletes I worked with was actually not an athlete at all. We've had a number of just people say, I want to just keep my brain sharp, and can you work with me even if I'm not an athlete? Absolutely. We all have brains. And, so she just wanted to she was a very interesting woman. She was not an athlete. And she just said, I want to just learn techniques. I want to do something different. And, her training was a little bit different, but she called me after her first session and she said, my driving was better. I said, well, yeah, she said, I just felt like I was aware of the cars around me. I was looking 2 cars ahead of me, and I just felt like I was a better driver. I said, absolutely. No matter what we're doing, it's important in our sports, but it's also important in our daily lives. So we're not going to hopefully get hit by a car when we're walking because we're paying attention more, or we're better drivers. A lot of the kids we've worked with, a lot of the work we've done is sustained focus and concentration, and schoolwork has been improved. And that for me is just, it's all rewarding, it's all great, but to have somebody not only be a better athlete, but a better student and enjoy school more, and to hear that feedback from their teachers and parents, you're really touching lives. And I feel like maybe they don't become a professional athlete, but if I've given them the gift of better education and enjoying school more, that to me is even more rewarding sometimes in the sports.
I interviewed Dr. Larry Lampert not too long ago, and he talks a lot about visual skills and how it relates to improvement in driving.
It's huge.
He also talks a lot about phorias, and if you could just explain what a foria is, and if you're exo or ESO, and how could it affect you, maybe playing hockey or baseball or tennis, how it might affect whether you're pulling the ball too much or swinging late.
So phorias are kind of where our eyes line up, and that is something usually measured at a comprehensive exam or binocular vision assessment. So if an athlete is finding that they are too late or too early when they're swinging or in baseball, or if they're playing tennis and they feel like they're always consistently doing something, usually, again, I will refer them out first to a binocular vision specialist to measure all of that and to make sure that they have the proper eye control. We will use something called a Brock string, which is a string with colored beads on it. It's very high tech, but it's very powerful. And what we have the athlete do is they hold the string up to their nose, and we ask them to look at a colored bead at a distance. And if their eyes are what we call in alignment, that they're seeing where they're supposed to, when you do that, the string looks like it's crossing through the bead, and it looks like it's making an X. And if they are in alignment, that string will cross at the bead. And I don't ask the athletes, is it crossing at the bead? Because everyone wants to say yes. They want to give me the right information. Or I say, if you're looking at that red bead and their eyes are crossed a little bit, where's the string crossing? Where's the X? And they might say to me, okay, I see the bead, but the string is crossing way in front. Well, I know that their eyes are not as aligned as we'd like them to be. Or if they say, Dr. Stewart, I see the X crossing behind the bead, to me, that's a sign that their eyes are not lined up where they need to be. So when they're going to look at a ball coming towards them, they think they're fixating in one place, or they think their eyes are looking in one place, but they're really looking in a different place. So that for me would be a referral out to a binocular vision specialist who would really work on fixing that and giving them tools and therapy to help either learn to move that out or bring that in. And then we would continue back on the sports vision.
And with eye-hand coordination, do you use strobe glasses? And how does that help?
So strobe glasses are really fun too. So if you Google, there's probably tons of videos. I feel like there's a Steph Curry strobe glasses video too. I might be wrong, but so strobe glasses are very cool. They're a pair of glasses that you put on and they flicker. So the lenses themselves go from light to dark. So you see everything and then they go dark and you don't see anything. In the past, we used to do that with like a strobe light. So we would make the whole room flicker. So what we're trying to do with these glasses is block vision in a good way. So when the glasses are flickering, you can make them flicker at different speeds. So when it's flickering very quickly, that's the easiest level because the information is basically there. The light's flickering very quickly. But as you slow that down, the flicker gets slower. So the information, there's less information, less visual information for the athlete to see. So again, they have to rely on their decision-making, their visual cues to remember where everything is and then make a decision based on what they saw. These are fun to use. We use these a lot when we're doing a demo for teams because it's very fun to take the two best baseball players and I say, who's the best here? Give me your two best athletes. Two kids will hold their hands up. I said, come on up here. I said, we're going to throw a tennis ball back and forth. You can do this, right? And they all look at me and go, well, yeah, of course, lady. That's why I'm here. So I have them throw a tennis ball back and forth and everyone's watching and waiting. And then I put the strobe glasses on them. And I usually don't make it really hard, but I put them on the lowest level and they start flickering and they toss the ball and maybe they miss and everyone laughs. But usually on the faster speeds, they just go, okay, I don't really see the difference. So then I'll slow it down and I have them toss. And inevitably somebody tosses it and the other kid's waiting and he never reacts because he is waiting based on information that he thought he'd be seeing, but that visual information is blocked. What's interesting is the better the athlete, how they learn very quickly and, they laugh and I say, okay, let's keep going, keep tossing the ball back and forth. Inevitably with the better athletes, they respond very quickly and they go back to playing toss. And they've now made a decision. Their brain and visual system have said, okay, we're not seeing all of the information. I saw something. Now I'm going to anticipate where that ball is going to end up and I'm going to make that decision, even though I didn't see it. But I'm going to make a decision based on what I did see. So we'll do that. And then when we take the glasses off, this goes back to your point about being in the zone. It's my favorite reaction because everyone has the same reaction. I have them keep tossing. They're like, oh my gosh, the tennis ball looks huge. I can see the fibers on the tennis ball. It's incredible. I didn't change the tennis ball. What happened now is their visual system is primed and they're kind of firing at a different level because they've had to anticipate all of this thing and make their cognitive system work a little harder. Now, when they take the strobes off, they're like, oh my gosh, this is easy, where it was the same skill they were doing before. So they're a lot of fun. We use them in training. A lot of our athletes use them to warm up before a game. It's a really great way for them to kind of be prepped and prepared because now they go out on the ice or they go out on the field and their visual system is ready.
Something new that athletes are using, the Hiko sticks.
Yeah, that's another great way to kind of train eye-hand coordination. There are sticks with different colors. So not only is it training eye-hand coordination as you toss it, but you can have somebody make a motor response or a decision based on what you want them to do when they grab it. So what we use also is going back to baseball, something called vision rings. Think of a hula hoop almost with wiffle balls, kind of in the circle. And The easiest is one ball with a hoop, and you toss it and tell somebody, catch the ball part of it, don't catch the hoop. And it sounds easy, but it's spinning, and you have to quickly make a decision where that wiffle ball is and grab at that part and make the right movement. It gets harder as you can add different colors of balls throughout that ring. And now I toss it to you and I say, catch the red ball. So now you have to see where that red ball is in this hoop, make an anticipation and motor decision where it's going to be, and try and, hope you're right. And they're very similar, in technique. They've been around a long time. They're super fun. They look easy. Again, it's another thing people are like, oh, well, that's pretty easy. And they grab it, and, it's dynamic visual acuity again, because you're tracking as it's coming towards you. You're having to make a decision, anticipate, and a saccade to decide where your hand's going to go. But they're another big baseball, a favorite in the baseball world, because you can make it as complex as you want. So again, to a baseball player, it's very similar to them making the decision of the pitch. Anything we can do to make them make that decision quicker and be more precise in that movement is going to make them better when they step out on the field.
Do you use bit lights?
Fit lights?
Yeah.
Yep. So the fit lights we use, those wireless lights, they are infinitely fun, and they are a great way to, again, eye-hand coordination. So they can either be, you can either hit them, or you can wave your hand in front of them to turn off the light. So at the kind of most basic level, you can, eye-hand coordination and tap them as quick as you can. We make it super complex, and we might say, like my kids just got Simon for Christmas. So we got my boys like the original Simon game, which if you don't know what Simon is, Simon starts out with 4 colors, and you have to, it flashes a color, you have to hit that color, and then it'll do 2 colors, and you have to do it in that order, and then 3, and then 4. So we do that a lot with the fit lights, that we will say, you have to hit them in the order red, green, blue, yellow. And either they have to do it as quick as they can. We might do that with balance. So it's not only the eye-hand coordination of them hitting the lights, but it's, again, the cognitive decision of seeing something and deciding what they need to do and then doing it.
They use something called a NeuroTracker for hockey. Can you explain that?
So NeuroTracker is another great tool that we use. NeuroTracker is a computer program where, if you picture 8 balls moving on a screen, and this is just one of the ways to use it. So we use a 3D TV, which does not exist anymore. But there's a 3D technology they use to make it look like these balls are moving in space. So one way that we use it is there'll be 8 balls on the screen, and 4 will be identified, and they'll say, Jen, these are the 4 you need to track out of the 8. And they will all be the same color, and they're all going to be different. They're all going to be moving, and they're moving in space. They're moving in 3D. So again, it's something that sounds easy, but it is not. And they get faster the better you do. So it's quick sessions, but it really works on predictive movement. So athletes have to track. They have to be good at tracking 4 out of 8 balls. So if you try and only track 1, you've lost 3. So you have to spread your attention to track 4 out of the 8. You have to remember which ones you're tracking. And as they get faster, you have to anticipate where they're going, and then remember which ones you were tracking and identify them. So it's a really fun way to work on a lot of skills in a short period of time. It's like a big video game. So it's a lot of fun to all of my athletes of all ages. And they don't realize how much it's working on all of the skills they need. Also, it's great for concentration. If you think about something else for a split second, you're done. And we watched that. And I had a hockey goalie who was I think 9 when I started working with him. He had the highest NeuroTracker scores out of everybody. And he just was unbelievable at such a young age. He was able to really track and kind of split his attention. And he came in one day, and I was watching him, and he'd miss. Every time you miss, it gets slower. Every time you get them all right, it gets faster. And he was missing and missing and missing. So I paused it, and I said, I'll call him John. I said, John, that's, really unlike you. I said, is everything going okay? It's like, you're usually, cranking through this. And he said, so I'm really worried about a test next week. And I said, no, I understand. I know it's, it's tough. And he was a great student. And I said, but when you're here, is that helping you with the skills you're working on? Is worrying about that test next week doing a good job in here? And he said, no. And I said, what if you were out on the ice tomorrow in a big game, your championship, and you started thinking about your test next week? What do you think is going to happen? Do you think your focus and attention is going to be on that game, or is it going to be on the test next week? And he said, it's going to be, I said, the minute you think of something else and your focus is away, that's when that puck goes in and you've missed that goal. I said, when you're here and when you're on the ice, your focus has to be on the game, and we have to really work on that. And none of us are good at it. We're all thinking about tomorrow and next week and yesterday and all the things we need to do. And I said, but when you get on that ice, you need to be in the moment, and that's when you're going to be most successful. So for me, NeuroTracker, that was kind of one of the best things we've worked on with it, which is not something we anticipated, but it really trained athletes that they can't worry about other things and they have to be only worrying about what they're doing. And we made it difficult. We would start with it quiet. The first sessions, the door's shut, it's completely quiet. Then I'd leave the door open and there's music playing in the hallway. And now I would walk around and do other things. Maybe I'm moving stuff around, trying to distract them. Then I start, talking, how's it going? How's school going? How's your test? How's your hockey season going? So now they have to try and figure out a way to deal with me and keep their mind on the task. And if they can do that, and then maybe we're tossing balls at them, they have to catch. Maybe they're standing on a Bosu ball. Maybe they're dribbling a basketball. So we overload them again. Then I say, if you can focus on all of this in here, when you step out there, it's going to be much easier.
So that brings us to visual snow syndrome. If you could explain what that is.
So visual snow is a tough one. It's kind of a static that people see in their visual system. So that's not one I really work with a lot. I usually have some great people I refer out for that one as well, if I do have somebody that has visual snow.
And we talked a little bit about contrast sensitivity before. And so what is some of the things that you do to increase the contrast sensitivity?
So again, it's really being aware and teaching athletes to be aware of what they're dealing with. But overall, working on skills in varying light conditions and varying contrast to get them to make better decisions in those moments, so that they don't get surprised, and really getting them to be aware of different light conditions, but making it more difficult in the training. So just like we check vision, everyone in the eye chart, we're checking a vision with black letters on a white background. Again, I tell patients, unless you're me, that's not the day-to-day work you're doing. Our work is not high contrast, black letters on a white background. So same with the athletes, sports have very different conditions. So we will try and mimic that as much as we can to do the training in those conditions, so that when they're in those conditions, they've been dealing with that a lot, and they've been doing this training maybe in dimmer light, maybe in brighter light, and then we might use a white ball and have them doing drills against a white background to make it a little more difficult.
How does polarized lenses help with certain sports, being outside, whether you're skiing or maybe playing tennis? When would you recommend polarized glass?
So polarized lenses cut out glare, and they cut out glare depending on lighting conditions. So and polarization is a very everyone's a little different, but depending on the sport they prefer. So with fishermen or anyone who spends time on the water, polarization is key, because it's going to cut the glare on the water when they're looking down. So if you ever see a picture of water and you can see right down, you can see the fish underneath, they probably use a polarizing lens filter so that you can get rid of the glare on the surface. For sports, it really helps with enhancing contrast and helping an athlete see better at different contrast levels. It depends. So as a cyclist, some cyclists like polarized lenses. I prefer non-polarized because I like seeing everything, and I like seeing in the different light conditions. I like seeing different textures of the road to keep myself safe. A lot of athletes who are, tennis is a great one because it cuts down glare. Golfers sometimes wear polarized lenses. Anyone in a water sport.
But does it affect like the green where you can't see the?
It could, and that's where everyone's got different preference. So Some people like it. Some people find it doesn't give them the true read of the green, for sure. And there's lots of different tints and that can be used at different light conditions as well.
And I want to finish with eye injuries. You know, there's about 600,000 serious eye injuries from sports. And most kids don't wear eye protection. Uh, why is that? And what can we do to prevent eye injuries? And what kind of protection should kids wear?
My other near and dear to my heart, Woman Crusade. So eye injuries in sports are real. They tend to be preventable. So I'll ask, and I don't know if you know the answer, but what's the #1 sport for eye injuries?
Well, it depends on what you read, but it's either baseball or basketball.
So usually it's basketball. And there's like, I did a lecture last week and I used a horrible picture of like fingers going in the eye in the basketball game. But basketball and then water sports tend to be second. So, and most of these are preventable injuries in that they could be prevented if somebody was wearing proper eye protection. So just like we are passionate about making sure people are seeing well, I also want people to know that they should be wearing proper sports eyewear for the sport they're participating in. And I think the disconnect is, again, we don't think we need it because we don't think we need the correction, or it's just not something we've really made essential. We don't go to play football without a helmet. We're not playing. I played field hockey. I didn't step onto that field without my mouth guard and my shin guards. But you can get fake teeth. You can't get fake eyes. So, we're not really, we're protecting, but we're not looking at the eyes. And I think hopefully you'll see a change. I'm really working hard to bring awareness to everyone, the public and professionals, about the importance of proper eye protection. When I talk about it to patients, especially my young ones, I love to say, do you play soccer in your flip-flops? And they laugh, they laugh at me. And I said, well, do you play baseball in a dress or softball in a dress? And they laugh. And I said, but why are we wearing our glasses to play a sport? It's the same. When you step out on a field, we're putting our cleats on, we're putting our shin guards, we're putting our helmet on, but we're either wearing nothing on our face or we're wearing what we call dress glasses. So we tend to refer to our everyday pair of glasses as our dress glasses. And I feel they have no place on any kind of sporting field, rink, court, because they're not made for sports. The frame is not made to withstand any impact, and the lenses should be impact resistant, but they're not providing the proper protection. So I think everyone should be wearing proper safety eyewear, and it's important to make sure there are different standards for different sports. There's a governing body that sets those standards, so making sure they're appropriate for the sport and that they're independently tested to make sure that they are actually providing the protection they say they are. So hopefully you'll see me out there more talking about it. It's something I really feel passionately about, and spend a lot of time talking with my patients about the importance of safety. And the glasses are much better than they used to be. So everyone has this visual memory of, middle school gym and some horrible big goggle looking glasses, but they now look like sunglasses. They look fun. They're colorful. There's some lines that are camo. I mean, they look very fun and cool. And a lot of my young athletes tend to wear those as their primary pair, which is super fun for me. So I'm hoping I get the word out more about that.
We typically don't like to mention brands, but in this case, if you could mention some brands for sport, because it's that important to protect the kids' eyes.
So my favorite is Xyloware, which is Shack eye gear. So Shack is really passionate about youth and protection and safety. And it's a brand new line that came out last year, of course, right in the middle of COVID. But it's a really cool line of sports safety eyewear that is fun. It's, like I said, it's colorful. Shaq is a fun, colorful guy. he's just like this happy-go-lucky, very big personality. And the Shaq eye gear matches that. There's great colors. There's great patterns that are going to be out. It's just a very fun look. And they don't look like the sports vision goggle glasses that everyone's kind of picturing in their head. They're very cool, and they're very colorful and very fun. So that's my personal favorite. I think it really makes I say to parents, it has to be, the kids have to want to wear them, and the adults have to want to wear them. It goes for adults as well, but you have to make it fun and make it look cool. And, athleisure is in. We all are wearing sports gear all the time. So why not make that our eyewear as well?
So is Shaq 7'2"?
He's massive. I met him last year at Vision Expo. I've never seen a larger human in my life.
It's Shaquille O'Neal?
Shaquille O'Neal, yeah.
Oh, that's
So,
it's his line?
It's his line, yeah. So I met him last year at Vision Expo, and I am not a small person. I'm 5'10", and I felt very short that day. His hands are massive, but he's extremely passionate about kids and safety and protection. So that really shows in his line as well.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So is there anything else that I didn't mention that you'd like to mention before we close?
Oh, I think this was a very comprehensive look. And, I think my words of wisdom would be that we often think of sports and performance vision for professionals. And with my goal with starting my sports vision practice, Performance 2020, was I wanted to bring the tools that were available to professionals to athletes of all ages and abilities. And anyone who moves their body to me is an athlete. And, I'll have patients say, oh, well, I don't need to do any of that because I'm not competitive. I just play for fun. If you're moving your body, you're an athlete. And we whether it's protection on the safety side or it's enhancement, everyone out there, if you are participating in a sport, think of yourself as an athlete. And, the tools and technology that are available are so great to enhancing sports and performance at every level. And the added benefits in school and confidence. We had an athlete who just his confidence skyrocketed. So again, it's these intangible benefits of the training that are so important, and the life skills that they're making. It goes beyond sports to me. So I'm super passionate about it. If you check out the International Sports Vision Association website, if you're looking for a practitioner in your area, and we'd all welcome working with every one of you.
Dr. Stewart, I really want to thank you for joining me today. If people want to find out more about you, how can they do that?
So my website is www.perform2020.com. So you can, if there's I think we have a great video. So we put together a video talking about sports and performance vision and kind of showcasing some of the training we did, because again, it's hard to picture a lot of this. People are listening going, I just don't see, I can't picture it in my head. So we worked really hard to put together a video to explain what it is and what we do and how we work with athletes. And we showcase some of the athletes we are working with. And I think it'll help people understand, oh yeah, that's what she means. And that's the skills. And you'll see it from a couple different perspectives. So I welcome you to reach out to us on Performance 2020. We have a remote training program set up as well on the website. So we're working with athletes all over the country. Just some really great technology and tools that are out there, and the future it only gets brighter in this field as well.
Well, Dr. Stewart, I want to thank you for joining me today. This is Dr. Kerry Gelb for Open Your Eyes, and I wish everybody great health.
Thank you.
Presbyopia, I have no idea how to say that.
Presbyopia? Presbyopia might be the ability to see Presbyterians.
There are people who are afraid of the press.
I have no idea what it is, honestly. Presbyopia.
A condition in which the eye loses its ability to focus.
Making it hard to see objects up close.
I've heard the bifocal, but not multifocal.
I have never heard of multifocal contact lenses, no.
Since I bought Safe for You, my dad makes me clean his boat.
Es natural y es un buen producto.
Every time I go back to school, my mom always makes sure that I have my Safe for You products. I bring extra, and my roommates certainly don't mind.
It's a good thing I had Safe for You to clean up after this little guy.
When my hands get dry, I like to wash them with Safe for You.
And most importantly, the reason why I buy Safe for You is because it's safe for me and you.